Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today we talk about episode 1 of Snowpiercer from TNT. So Snowpiercer is a show that is kind of a reboot of the Bong Joon-ho film from 2013. It's not exactly a sequel or a prequel. The timeline's actually a little muddled when I was trying to look into it. I'll add in a timeline that I found from the publisher of the graphic novel series, because this is initially based off of a graphic novel even back before 2013. So it's kind of confusing where it takes place in this whole timeline. But all that being said, it is still dealing with the class struggles of the Snowpiercer, the train that's perpetually running through this apocalyptic tundra. The world is frozen over and everyone is living on this train, and the worst off are living in the very back of the train and the very well off are further along the front, and it deals mostly with that constant struggle between these classes. And I have to say, as I was watching this show, it feels kind of strange. It doesn't have the gritty nature of the film. That film works so well because of the stylistic choices. On its face, Snowpiercer is kind of a silly premise when you think about it, when you take a second to really dive into it. It works more as a philosophical experiment than an actual thing that could take place. But I think the overall style and grit and just the construction of the film made it work perfectly. It's a really enjoyable film, but trying to stretch it out over 10 episodes, I'm just not sure how they're going to do it after watching the first one. And that being said, I don't think it was the worst thing in the world. I think some of the performances were fairly solid. Daveed Diggs as Leighton, who is someone who's brought up from the end of the train to be an investigator. He's someone who was previously a detective, a homicide detective. He needs to solve this mystery of who's committing these murders in the upper class trains. So kind of shoehorned in, it feels when you're watching it that they need to find some way to bring this character up into the other trains. And it just doesn't have that conflict that I feel like the original film had. And I don't know, it's just strange. The story itself, maybe it's going to evolve a little bit more, maybe I'm going to enjoy it a little bit more, but as of right now, it just doesn't grip me. I will say I think the production of the show is pretty decent so far. I do think the physical look of everything, while it is far more polished than the film, it does work for accessible audiences. It's not as stylized as the movie, though I do like the style of the movie more. But then some of the parts, it falls a little bit short. The CGI is a little odd at times, a little wonky, not totally there. I do think the overall look of Snowpiercer isn't perfect. It doesn't have that dark, gritty, like really post-apocalyptic feel that it did from the film, but maybe this is leaning more into a kind of high sci-fi look to things. It looks a little bit more like something you might see from the Sci-Fi Channel than something you would see in a gritty film. There's also a twist at the end of the first episode that I'm not going to give away if you want to watch it, and I thought it was interesting, but it feels like something that would have been better served further along in the story. It's kind of strange. I don't know how long this season's going to be, but the fact that they're able to give up that so quickly, it must have a different payoff as it goes along, because that feels like something that would have built up and you would have been really blindsided by this, but they decided to do it in that first episode. It felt like a weird storytelling choice. The script itself is fairly decent so far. It's a little clunky at times because, like I said, Snowpiercer as a concept is a little strange, and it works more as a interesting, introspective look of class warfare that's excellently crafted in the film. So when you have things being explained to you in a more longer format way, you're kind of like, this sounds a little bit goofy and a little bit hard to follow. So those are my first thoughts on the first episode of Snowpiercer from TNT. I don't have a lot to run off yet. I feel like I was watching, I thought it was a little bit slow. I thought it was a little bit boring, to be honest with you. It's setting it up, and maybe it's really going to build on this, and I'm going to be really compelled to watch the rest of it. But so far, it just doesn't feel like it lives up to that film. The film works so well as a little encapsulated thing that's based off a graphic novel. It has some really interesting concepts and is able to be created so well in that small package, but I feel like stretching it out feels like a stretch. So let me know if you checked out this show, how you felt about the first episode. Maybe you really enjoyed it. Maybe you're really captivated by it. And I'm interested to see what people think about it that actually watched the film. If you watch it without the film, maybe it would be something that stands alone a little bit better. Someone who really enjoys the film like I do, it just doesn't live up to it. It doesn't have the great performances of Chris Evans. It doesn't have the great direction of Bong Joon-ho. It just doesn't have that style. The thing that makes that movie almost like a cult classic, it doesn't have those elements. It has some of the things that make Snowpiercer interesting, but nothing that made the movie great. So let me know what you think. Leave those comments down below. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.